All right, everyone. Well, welcome to our weekly Wednesday webinar series and a happy Earth Day, 50th anniversary, a big deal, and I really appreciate all of you joining us on Earth Day and being with us here for this short time. I know there's a lot going on out there, so I really appreciate that. Thank you, and we're going to get right into it. And also, we have a special guest here today at the end of this session. For those of you either interested specifically in development in West Michigan or just genuinely interested in groundwater depletion and strategies that counties can use to get around it, we've got Paul from the Ottawa County Planning Department here in Michigan. And we're going to do that after the word session. We're going to keep on going, keep having that conversation for those of you either local or interested in those issues. So that'll be outside of your Con Ed requirements. So don't worry if you got to cut and run to your next Earth Day event. Please, know you'll still get your continuing ed and stick around. And if you can't hear me right now and you didn't hear any of that, sorry, but yeah, head up to the audio tab, click on sound check, resolve your speaker issues. If that doesn't work, try switching between phone or computer back and forth. If that doesn't work, log out of WebEx, log back in, and that usually resolves 99% of all issues. And just real quick, to get your Con Ed, watch the entire session and then take the survey at the end that pops up. Same survey is emailed to you, don't take it twice. And even if you don't need CEUs, we definitely appreciate all your feedback, so make sure to take that. Next week, we're going to be having a webinar that we had hoped to not have to have, but we're very thankful to Ty Newell coming back to join us again and talking about what we're starting to learn, especially when it comes to our buildings for the outbreak. And then we're going to be the following week talking about solar wildlife-friendly farms. And then a day after, we've got a really cool project in Ann Arbor that we're doing a virtual citizens participation meeting on the world's first living building multifamily project. And even if you don't live in Ann Arbor and you're not a citizen there, we definitely think you can come and learn something. And then we've got our big LEED Green Raider training coming up in May. So check that out if you want to be a LEED Green Raider. Support our mission to help empower people to make places we live healthier and more sustainable. Keep these webinars going, get instant access and other discounts like on our Green Raider course I just discussed. Go to become a member today. All right, well, welcome everyone to the Water Efficiency Rating System, or WERS. Is it a good addition to my business? This course is approved for 1 hour continuing education units, chiefly among the health, welfare, and safety through AIA, which may make it applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. Today, I will be your moderator. My name is Brett Little, and I'm the executive director here at the nonprofit, the GreenHome Institute. And for us, energy performance ratings, we all know about those, but the future is taking that same idea and bringing them into water performance ratings, water performance scores into our new and existing buildings and homes. And so that's why we're excited to be having Mike back with us today to talk about the WERS. And before we get started, it's no surprise that toilets are the #1 cause of high water bills, and yet savings are only a simple flush away. Niagara Conservation has answered the call by developing the world's #1 water-saving toilet using advanced vacuum-assisted technology. That's right, vacuum and not pressure. We have glowing reviews from multifamily affordable housing renovation specialists who only use these toilets because of their durability and cost savings. If you know they work in that situation, they can work in any. ADA approved models for the side handle available as well. So how low can you go? The Stealth is 0.8 gallons per flush with a single flush, so you don't have to deal with the two confusing dual flush options. However, the Nano now gets down to 0.5 gallons per flush, with the highest one being at 0.8 if you really want to go super low. You can also check out the 1.25 Niagara Earth shower head and 0.5 gallon per minute aerators as well. All WaterSense certified, all good flow rates that are low but still work. Check out Niagara Conservation for your next project. We also thank our second sponsor, Water Furnace International. Water furnace uses the natural heating and cooling of the earth through ground source heat pump technology, which currently creates more energy efficient heating and cooling on the planet, as well as hot water. They also have many system types: forced air, radiant, combo, boiler replacement, dual fuel, and more. The top left horizontal loop for open tracts of land, top right for vertical lots with trees, urban tight spots, bottom left for pond loops, which tend to be the most efficient, and bottom right for groundwater use in an area with a lot of abundant groundwater. All different strategies to get the energy out of the ground for geothermal. And go to geothermalforall.com to learn everything you want to know in a neutral way about geothermal. All right, well, I want to welcome Mike here, and we're just going to dive right into it. This is, I believe, second or third time we've had him from Green Builder, the Green Builder Coalition here to talk about WRS. So, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then you can take it away. So, thank you. How about now?
Hey, am I here?
You are, yep.
That's awesome. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And we're going to show my screen here. All looking good now?
Yep, perfect.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And yes, I was looking back at my notes, and it was just about 4 years, almost to the day, when I had presented a session on WRS with you, Brett. So appreciate the invitation back again. I really do appreciate it. And I appreciate all of you joining me and spending a little bit of your Earth Day with me. I'm able to see some of the attendees and see a couple of friends in there, and a whole bunch of friends that I haven't made friends with yet. So again, thank you for joining. So we're going to talk a little bit about WRS and if it's a possible good addition to your business. I'm a little curious as to, what kind of business you may be in out there. So if you feel so inclined to put your profession, maybe you send it into the questions box or something like that. It's always good to kind of get a sense of the audience. And since we are in this virtual type of state for the foreseeable future, this is just how we'll have to do it, and we won't be in person for a little while, but that's okay. So what are we going to talk about here? Well, Brett showed the learning objectives in the beginning, but then also we're going to talk a little bit about the case for why do we need to be water efficient. Some instances it's a no-brainer, and others it might surprise you. We're going to talk about WRS and what is it. We're going to do a little bit of a quick high-level walkthrough of the tool. Then we're going to talk about how it's applicable, and there are a number of ways that WRS is applicable and some of its uses as well. So first thing we're going to do here, let me get that control panel out of my way. There we go. Supply concerns. And this is not just a Western thing. Brett talked about, we're going to hear from Paul from Ottawa County, Michigan, a little bit later on. And he's going to tell you about, it's not just a Western thing. This can be an issue in the Midwest. I'm a Midwesterner myself. You can have issues with supply even in Florida. We're seeing, with sea level rise, some of their aquifers are starting to have salt water seep into them, and so now they're getting brackish water. So you don't think of it as just it's a California problem. It's not. Hold on a second here. There we go. Infrastructure costs. Most municipalities don't have the capabilities to say, we're just going to replace water mains or we're going to expand water mains. You're talking millions upon millions of dollars, and depending upon the city and its size and how many miles of pipe, it can extend into the billions. So it's not a decision that people can just take lightly and go, oh yeah, we'll just go ahead and do that. And the farther west you go, you're starting to see some changes, not so much on the infrastructure side, but more on the, hey, maybe I'm living in a remote area and I have to import water. By truck, well, that's pretty expensive. And also, if you're trying to landscape, in some instances, you're going to get at best sideways glances from your neighbors, and at worst, you might have people stopping by asking you what in the world you're doing. So there's some issues there. And I think the other thing that more and more people are starting to make the connection of the energy footprint of water and how much energy is used to treat and pump, distribute water is just incredible. So there's multiple reasons, but then let's get into some costs. And some of these numbers may actually surprise you. This is the average cost of water per month in the United States. Now, this is over an 8-year span. So on your left is 2010, to the right is 2018. This is the average for the United States. And you go, oh, well, those numbers aren't too bad. But keep in mind, these don't reflect the associated sewer or stormwater costs. And as you can kind of take a look at these line graphs here, you'll see that over that 8-year window, it's between a 56 and a 58% increase, depending upon how much water you're using, but it's pretty consistent. Now, I want to zero in on a couple of localities that I think are germane to some of the audience, at least based on those who registered and said where they were at. So let's look at Chicago, okay? Now, those dollar amounts don't look too bad, right? But just stay with me for a second. For reference purposes, that middle line, it's kind of yellowish on my screen, that first amount there in 2010 is $24.12. You go, okay, family of 400 gallons a day, okay, that's cool. But when you take that line out to 2018, that's a 93% increase in 8 years. Now, that 93% increase is the same for all water users because Chicago doesn't have tiered billing rates. And for those of you who aren't familiar with tiered billing rates, those are rates that increase the more water that you use. So you hit a certain threshold of gallons per month, and it kicks up to a higher dollar amount. We'll show an example of that in just a minute. Go to some place like New York. Now, these numbers are higher. The increase is actually lower. The price of water escalated over 45% in 8 years for all water users. Again, they're using flat rate billing. So that breaks down to about a 5.5% annual increase in water rates. So the escalation over the 8-year period was about half of what Chicago saw, but they started with the higher numbers. Now, just to make sure that make everyone feel better, at least you don't pay a water bill in Santa Fe. Now, I joke because there's a friend of mine from Santa Fe attending the webinar today. But what you've got here is a place that has tiered billing rates. So you use up to 7,000 gallons. I think it's 6,000 or 7,000 gallons. After that amount, the price kicks up from $6 a thousand to $21 a thousand gallons. So it's quite a punitive price signal to the market. And the other thing that's interesting is you see a lot of flat lines. They haven't increased their billing rates since 2013. So what you saw before with New York and Chicago, where they're steadily going up, these are really high dollar amounts, and they've had the good fortune of not increasing their rates. So, you know, you could have a worse situation. It just depends. But water rates themselves are an issue. And of note, for Santa Fe, this is where the concept of a residential water rating was born, and I think you can see where their motivation came from. Now, finally, why is water efficiency necessary? Some of this has to do with legacy. You don't put a dollar amount on that. Some of us on this webinar may have kids home right now, remote learning, like I do, like Brett does, and some of you probably do too. what is the legacy you want to leave for them? Not just on water, but just the environment in general. What do you want them to experience as they get to be our age? If they have kids, what do you want the environment to be like? So that's also why I've always felt that water efficiency is necessary. And whether you try and put a dollar amount on it or not, it's still very real. The good news is that both measurement, which is what we're going to talk about here with WERS, and incentives, which WERS can be a part of, can really increase participation in conservation efforts. And we know this. So let's get into what is WERS. Well, WERS is the Water Efficiency Rating Score, and it's applicable to new and existing single-family and multifamily buildings. Now, the name itself, score, that's one of the outputs that we've got. And the scale goes from 0 to 100, where lower is better, kind of like if you're playing golf. And we're familiar with 0 to 100 scales in this industry as it is now. So from that standpoint, there's really not much of a difference. When you have a score and you assign it to a property, it allows you to compare, similar properties to one another in a geographic area. It does get a little tricky when you're talking about, oh, I've got a house in California, I'm going to try and compare it to a house in Minnesota, because there's different rainfall amounts. So that's why I add that disclaimer of, in similar geographic areas. But typically when you're using this score, whether it's for a code or a financial incentive, there's, it usually has a limited geography in where it's used. And there are other inputs to WERS, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. The other thing about this is that this is a third-party evaluation. WERS verifiers are not a part of the design team. They're not making product choices. So from the municipality standpoint, they could say, all right, maybe we don't have building code inspectors that can go out and look for some of this stuff or take the time or even learn about what a water rating is and get up to speed on that. But we have in other instances used third-party experts to help with a portion of the code compliance process. This would dovetail right into that. So before we go any further, I wanted to take a quick moment to do a high-level walkthrough of the tool itself. And what you're going to see is the tool that the verifier will use. And we're going to also talk about other roles within the WERS program, but we're going to look at the tool. So give me just a second while I flip over. And here we are. And I took us back to a happier time, let's say. Let's go back 1 year or even just a few months ago to when we were all just doing what we normally do. This is what the tool looks like. It is Excel-based. And when you enter your location, I got to explain something, I guess, before I continue. One is that white cells are typically open text boxes that you enter things into. And then the gray areas the gray areas are auto-populated. These kind of pink or peachish areas are drop-down menus. And then you'll see maybe some blue or some purple cells as well. Those are also auto-populated. But when you choose an area, a location, it already pre-populates your rainfall information. If your municipality tracks that information and wants to use their information instead of what the EPA has given us, then we have the ability to override, so it's okay. We do have the ability to put in billing rates, and that's important. We already talked about billing rates before in different areas, but we'll see on the rating report, which is this tab down here, we will see how billing rates come into play. You can put straight or tiered billing rates in. So we can handle up to, I think, 7 tiers, which there are a couple places that do use 7 tiers. All right. So we're looking at a new single-family home, and we're going to look at a number of different inputs. WERS is very comprehensive. We are wanting to, as one water expert said in a presentation once, we want to rate all the waters. And he's right. We want to look at what is the entire water use of the property, not just the house, the property, inside and outside. Now, we're going to look at things like pipe diameter. We're going to look at pipe type and where's the water heater, because you want to calculate structural waste. We're going to look at conditioned footprint, not so much the livable space, the conditioned space. We're going to look at the footprint. And I'm going to leave my mouse there for a second, because all these cells that have these little orange triangles or red triangles have really helpful menus that pop out. And our technical director, Lorene Boussard, has done a great job of programming this tool, and just she knows more about it than I do. She'd be way better at giving a walkthrough than me, but I'm just going through this quickly. But she has put all these helpful things in here, and guidance. There's a whole tab over here for documentation and defaults. I'm not going to dig into that. That's a whole book. But we look at a whole bunch of different inputs for the house. And again, I'm saying house now because this is just the house part. Down here, there's information on site, type of roof. Are you doing roof capture? For this example that I put together for you all today, I said that we were going to capture half the roof. We're going to capture, because I wanted to show you what the capture and usage portion of this tool looks like. We're looking at things like lot size, soil types. Paul, we're looking at soil types here, bud, and slope as well. We're also looking at the planted areas, pervious and impervious areas. And then again, this is the verifier view. So if you've got different notes that you're taking of what you see when you're out there, we've got text boxes. Also, another thing I'll point out now is that we have our own self-check for quality control. So it catches errors. Now, I went through this very thoroughly, so there weren't any errors. But if there were, it would have a number in here that would show me, oh, you made an error somewhere, and I can go figure out what's going on there. I know some people may have questions, and we're going to get to those questions afterwards. I was hoping to be able to see them, and unfortunately right now I can't see them. So Brett's going to help me with those questions afterwards. So go ahead and send them in, please do. We will get to them, but for the moment I'm just going to kind of keep going if that's okay. On the indoor tab, you're going to put in things like the flow rates, right? All the appliances and fixtures that you would normally find in a home. However, there may be some things that aren't, quote, normal or common, I guess I'll say. For instance, do you have thermostatic shutoff valves on the shower heads or the tub spouts? If you do, we can credit that. Also, the other thing I wanted to point out too, let's say you have different toilets. Okay, the master bath has a certain toilet and all the other bathrooms have a different toilet. We can quantify that right in here. Same thing for shower heads, same thing for faucets. Also, those very uncommon or relatively uncommon items, bidet, urinals, maybe the fridge has got a water distributor, maybe you've got a sauna, water softener, reverse osmosis, indoor pool, fountain, whatever it is. This can all be entered into here. Now, when those get entered into here, we may or may not have efficiency baselines, but it's just a simple one-to-one offset. So you're not getting penalized, you're also not getting rewarded for some of these water uses. We're just, again, like the water expert said, rating all the waters. When it comes to outdoor, this is a huge, huge water user in some places. So this is something that you make sure you've got to do this. And make sure you quantify this, check this out. We have a couple different ways to do this. The first is we have a table here where you can kind of break out excuse me, different areas of planted items, whether it be trees or turf grass, shrubs. We typically want to break this out into different hydrozones, if there are hydrozones. But we don't have to use this table if you don't want to. There is option 2, which isn't lit up at the moment because we went with option 1. But option 2 is you could use a third-party program. I know some of you use Lead for Homes. That is one of the third-party programs, along with WaterSense for Homes and Quell, that we also recognized, and we can get data points from those programs. And then you just bypass this table. You give us a couple of data points that we ask for, and we're all good there. Capture and usage. Like I said, I put in that we were going to capture some of the roof, not the whole roof, but some of the roof. So while we can also quantify gray water and black water capture, in some municipalities that's just not allowed, at least not for indoor at all. Sometimes for outdoor, sometimes not. It just really depends on where you're at. For this example, I used rainwater capture, and I did actually bring some of it inside. I said I was going to use it for toilet water only. Instead of flushing potable water, I was going to flush rainwater. In some jurisdictions that wouldn't be allowed. I know in the state of Illinois, it's pretty much frowned upon to bring water inside the house, unfortunately, but in other places, it is allowed. But this tool not just, says, oh, you can only use it for the toilet. You can use it for some of these other fixtures that you see. You can also say, I'm going to use it to offset outdoor water use. Now, I want to point out something specific here, and that is this green cell and this red cell. With the green cell, it's saying that, okay, you're going to capture X amount of water. It's based on average rainfall and how much of your roof you said you were going to capture. And then it's going to look at what did you want to use it for? And it's going to estimate or project your toilet usage. And it's going to simply net it out and say, hey, you know what? You're going to have enough. You'll have enough rainwater to offset your toilet usage. But why this red cell is here is because I also said, hey, I want to also use rainwater for irrigation purposes. And it's saying, okay, you're going to use it for your toilet. That's great. You got enough. The rest you're going to use for irrigation, but based on what you told me here, as far as your outside irrigable area, you don't quite have enough rainwater to offset all of your watering needs. It's not to say that you can't do this. It's just saying it's not going to be sufficient for the outdoor uses. So you're going to have to offset with a little bit of potable. This is not saying you can't do it. Actually, WHERS in and of itself, in most ratings, they don't really have built-in requirements. It's simply assessing the choices that you make. So when you get a red flag like this, it's just saying, hey, you're going to have to offset. Now, I also want to point this out because to me, this is the funnest feature of WHERS. WHERS has the ability to either tell you how big of a tank you need, or you can tell it how big of a tank you're installing, and then it will tell you what you can and can't do. So for this example, I said I was going to put in a 3,000 gallon rainwater tank. And this red cell is simply telling me you don't have a big enough tank for what you told me you wanted to do up here. Well, we knew that already from this red cell here. But this is just a confirmation that, yeah, you don't quite have a big enough tank. If you wanted to put in a big enough tank, here's where you look. And it will tell you, okay, you need to put in this big of a tank. And this number would change based on some of these choices if you change these. Finally, I want to get to the rating report. This not just tells you what the score is, but it's also going to project your water usage daily, monthly, and yearly. And because we put in some billing rates, it'll also show you what your cost savings are going to be over those same 3 timeframes. Now, while it breaks out indoor and outdoor, WHERS does not produce an indoor and an outdoor score. It looks at the entire property. So you just get one score, which is down here. And because when we were building this engine, we didn't know if certain jurisdictions wanted to look kind of in the direction of energy, where some places say, okay, you know what, you've got what's your energy rating with and without renewables. We decided to build in the ability to say, okay, what is your WERS without reuse and with? So that's why you're seeing these two different scores. Now we've also built in some other helpful things with this tool. I'm going to just briefly hit them. A disclosure form for the verifier, which is, you know, standard practice in the energy world. So you would have a disclosure form, and then something that we created with the help of the city of Santa Fe, a post-certification supplement form. And this would be in instances where you can't put the landscape in all the way because you are ready to open up or give a certificate of occupancy in the winter. And the builder says, you know what, I'll come back when it is appropriate and put landscape in, but for now, I'm pledging this is what I'm going to do, and that's kind of documentation to the jurisdiction having authority. Okay, this is what you said you're going to do, and that's what this rating is based off of. This is what we're going to hold you to. So, having shown that, we're going to go back to the slides. As I mentioned, it is for new and existing single family and multifamily. Now, for those of you who maybe were reading between the lines, this can be used as a design tool or an audit tool. In fact, one of our WERS development group members, years and years ago, said to us, hey, I want to be able to use this to play the what if game. And we're going to get into how you can do that in just a little bit. I already mentioned the outputs, so I'm not going to repeat that. I'm also not going to give any, I'm not going to step on the toes of Brett's sponsors. And by the way, Brett didn't tell me to say this, nor am I getting paid to say this, but the Niagara toilets are legit. So I'm a big fan of what they're doing. We have partner discounts because we recognize that the water efficiency savings, the on-bill savings, I showed those water rates earlier. Yet some people, they still kind of go, oh, water's pretty cheap and that. So we've kind of recognized that on-bill savings may not be enough to motivate people to save water. So we decided to try and increase the ROI by partnering with different manufacturers who offer discounts on their water efficient products if you're pursuing WERS on your projects. So you can see some of the discounts for some of the different water efficient products there. And if you want more information, we can follow up later. So where has this been implemented or adopted? Well, we've got the state of New Mexico, again, where this thing was kind of born, ran with it first. So there is a sustainable building tax credit, and it is cited in there, and that's been the case since the beginning of 2017. The city of Santa Fe put it into a single family residential green building code. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. It's their residential green building code, and it applies to single family. And it has since the beginning of March 2017, so a little bit over 3 years. And out there, you have to get a WERS of 70 or less when you go to get your permit. So you do a preliminary verification based on plans and cut sheets. Do you have a 70 or less? Yes. Okay, great. Now I'll issue a permit. Then when you go back to get your certificate of occupancy, you still have to have a 70 or less, because we all know things can change in the construction process. Different products get swapped out or a design change is made. And so they're fine with that. They're understandable of that. They say, okay, fine, as long as you are still at that 70 or less when you come back to get your certificate of occupancy, we're all good. The City of Santa Barbara, California allows WERS as a code compliance path for multifamily, and has so since September of 2018. So they're not doing it for single family, just multifamily. Built Green Canada is one of our partners. So we have been able to add metric where it may be needed in Canada. We've added metric to the tool. And obviously that allows us to use it in more places than just Canada. But for purposes of Built Green Canada, we put that in there. And they are looking to add WERS as an alternative compliance path for their water efficiency portion of their green building program this year. And we've already held the training class almost a year ago for 5 verifiers who are, looking to do verifications. And from my understanding, they're looking to do multifamily first before they move to single family, but that's fine. Of note today, of all days, the National Green Building Standard issued an announcement this morning that their 2020 version is now available. And it's the free PDF is available to download. And in that is something called the Water Rating Index. And it is basically a generic version of WERS. So that is also something that exists both in Chapter 8, which is their water efficiency chapter, but it's also Appendix D. And the reason for that distinction is jurisdictions who are looking to add some sort of water efficiency, either requirement or even some kind of incentive. Let's say, hey, you know what, we're going to put in this water efficiency ordinance, and it allows for faster permit review time, or maybe it's working with the utility or the water district, and they're going to maybe reduce tap fees or something. They can cite Appendix D right on out of the National Green Building Standard, which is an ANSI standard. So that's why the distinction needs to be called out. Into the future a little bit, we're going to look. WaterSense for Homes 2.0. We've been talking with them for about 2 years now. And what they want to do is transition WaterSense for Homes to be able to recognize performance-based approaches. And so if you get a WERS of X, and they haven't quite decided what X is yet, and you abide by WaterSense for or EPA WaterSense indoor requirements, then you would be eligible to get both a WaterSense for Home certificate and a WERS certificate too. So that's something that we anticipate going into effect at some point this year. I don't know exactly when, but that's what we've been told. And then the City of Santa Fe wants to expand their code. I mentioned earlier, it's just for single family. They want to expand it to include multifamily, and that will probably go into effect next year. Now, I say the options continue because we talked about how does this fit into your business? Well, depending upon what you want to do, that's where the fit may be. So if you are a field professional, you're used to going on site to do energy ratings, to do lead for homes verifications, National Green Building Standard, Passive House, Green Star, you're looking to do Living Building Challenge, whatever it is that you're doing and you're used to being out there, being a verifier may be the fit for you. Now, the verifier is going to bear responsibility for the project. They're the one who's going to be collecting all of the documentation and compiling documentation plans, photos, and also the tool itself. They're the ones who are going to be operating and using that. The way this works outside of New Mexico is the verifier will choose a certifying body. We have partnered with both UL Environment and Intertech as the certifying bodies. So the verifier will go into what's called the portal, which is hosted by Triconic, one of our partners. They choose the certifying body, start entering project information, and then they'll ultimately submit it. We'll get to that in just a minute. they are going to retain third-party status, as I said before. They're not involved with the design. They're not involved with purchasing. They are an independent observer and assessor. They do the on-site analysis and testing. There's an asterisk at the end of that because I'm going to get to why there's an asterisk when I get to talk about WERS field inspectors. The WERS verifier is going to interact with the quality control entity, making sure that, okay, did I have everything filled out right? If there are questions, the QC entity is going to go back to the verifier. They're not going to go back to anybody else. And this is a practice that we see in the energy rating world as well, and other verification models. And then the verifier is going to submit the required materials to the certifying body they chose for certification. Now, you say, you know, I don't typically operate in that fashion. I'm an architect, I'm a designer, I'm a landscape designer, I am a builder. I just want to know more about the tool and how it can help make decisions or help guide my decision-making process. Then possibly being a WERS consultant is the role for you. This person can be involved with design, can be involved with the purchase, can play the what-if game with the tool. Put in the information for the project and then say, hey, you know what, if we swap out all the toilets, what does it do? What is it? How does it project water usage differently now? How does it change the score? What if we do add a gray water system? What impact does that have? And they can be working hand in hand with the builder, with the architect, with whomever, and be very involved. Now, the third category of WERS field inspector, this is someone who doesn't go through the verifier path, doesn't go through the consultant path. They are simply contracted, they're subcontractors in essence of the verifier. They are going on site to do all of the data gathering or testing that the verifier asks or requests or specifies. So the verifier might say, hey, you know what, I need you to do flow rate tests on the faucets and the showers. I need you to get the flow rate that's stamped on the toilets. I might need you to check landscape, whatever it is. This field inspector can go out, gather those data points, and then get them back to the verifier. Again, it's the verifier who bears the responsibility. So if the field inspector makes some kind of error, it's on the verifier. So I would just say choose your subcontractors wisely, but I'm not trying to scare you off either. These field inspectors can be incredibly helpful, especially if you are a verifier in geography A, but you're looking to expand your business elsewhere without fully setting up an office and adding staffing in other parts of the country. So 3 different paths there for everybody to kind of check out. Now, like the webinar description stated, can WERS book you a hotel room? Captain Obvious would tell you, of course not. But as you've seen through this presentation, there is a lot that it can do. And so with that, I'd like to wish you all a happy Earth Day. And if you need to mow the lawn today, maybe you've figured out a sustainable way to do that. Or if you just want to get out and enjoy some scenery beyond the walls of your home, maybe you'll drive your green car. But if you're hunkering down, then I hope it's in a green home. All right, enough of the cheesy dad jokes. I will turn it back over to Brett, and let's get to all of your questions, please.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Mike. And we do have some questions rolling in here. And right before we get to those questions, real quick, just want to go through a couple of things. Sure. Can you see my screen now there?
I can.
Perfect. So yeah, just for those of you looking for your CEUs, take that survey. It'll pop up at the end, or it'll be emailed to you as well. We're going to be doing a little bit of a follow-up here after this, so you don't have to stick around for the entire thing to get those CEUs. But after Q&A, you can head out. But otherwise, we encourage you to stick around as well to talk with Paul from Ottawa County on water use planning. And for those of you listening in the future on demand, click on that YouTube link and then head down to show more. And then on the right, you'll see a way to access the quiz. You got to take a quiz to get your CEUs. And as those questions are coming in, and we got time for those, real quick, huge thanks to all of our members, our board of directors, all of our volunteers, and of course our top tier sponsors, Panasonic Ventilation, for smart ventilation that detects air quality pollution and ventilates as needed. T-Strut, structurally insulated framing systems that save energy and money behind the walls. Mitsubishi Electric, getting to net zero, all electric air source heat pumps, and Rheem for taking that air source heat pump technology into the water heater and making it work. So yeah, the first question has to do with our cold weather climate friends, and it has to do with snow. And let me make sure I'm asking the question correctly. Is the WERS rating software, here we go, let me expand this. Let me make sure I get this question correct.
Sure.
Now, for cold, snowy climates, is there compensation built into the software that accounts for no rainwater, but for snowfall, and how the homeowner might fall short in the winter months?
Sure. So the way that the precipitation portion of the tool works is it does, it gives you, I don't want to say credit, but it does show, okay, you've got precipitation throughout these various months. And it does include things like snowfall, because that's precipitation in winter. Where the tool kind of gets a little bit smarter is it says, hey, you're not going to need to water in the winter because you're not going to use your irrigation system when it's below freezing outside. And so the tool does make an adjustment as far as it cuts down the number of watering months. So if you're in a cold climate where you say, okay, I've got a 6-month growing season, then for 6 months out of the year, it's going to say, all right, then you're not going to need to be using irrigation outside. And so it does make that adjustment as far as water usage and water use projections go.
Apologize, there was another question on here, and before I could even read it or see it, I accidentally deleted it. So whoever asked that question, can you please retype it again? I'm really sorry about that. There is another question I had, and that was in regards to utilizing the program. If somebody wanted to use that program you showed us to make informed design decisions, what are the ways they could to access that?
Right. So my email address is there on the screen. So please reach out to me. I'll say this. We've put in a little over 6 years into the development of the WERS program. So not just even the tool, but also things like the training and education and the policies and all that sort of thing, going out to different conferences and talking about this. So while WERS is a proprietary tool, it is something that can be utilized, as I mentioned, in codes, in incentives, in green building programs. And if you're wanting to use it as just a design tool, for right or wrong, you go ahead and use this description. Think of it as a software program, and we do have a couple of different ways to, quote, license the tool. One is for verifiers, but the other is for consultants. And I think given the power of this tool, it's a pretty reasonable price. The consultant annual licensing fee is only $199 a year. So for a tool like this, and again, my favorite part is that it can calculate for you what tank size you might need, given what you're wanting to do on your site, or you can tell it, and it can tell you how you can best utilize that. I think it's pretty good value for that. So that's my, I guess, my advice to that question there.
Thanks, Mike. So thanks for putting that question back in there. Is the WERS rating based on consumption per building site rate or on consumption per person rate? If the latter, is there a default occupancy used, or how are the occupants determined?
Oh, okay, yeah. So what we have done with WERS, and it's also reflected in the Water Rating Index in the National Green Building Standard, is we used the ASHRAE calculation for occupancy, which is bedrooms plus 1. And so the water use projections are based on that. So a 3-bedroom home would assume that there's 4 occupants. I think the thing that I need to underscore with this, and I know that Lorene talks about this a lot when she presents on this as well, this is an asset projection. We recognize that in a 3-bedroom home, there might be 5 people living in there. There might be 2 people living in there. You have change of ownership. What this is doing is, like any modeling tool or any projection, is it's taking a snapshot in time. And it's saying, okay, at this moment, based on what you have told me, this is what is projected. If circumstances change, then obviously that would influence any model at all. And so you would, I'm not saying that people have to, go back and do this every single time. I'm just saying that that's where sometimes people will go, oh, well, wait a minute, what if there's only 2 people living in a 4-bedroom house? Well, yeah, then there's going to be less usage. However, if those 2 people in a year decide to sell that house to a family of 6, now all of a sudden that usage is going to go way up. And so this is trying to hit kind of the fat part of the bell curve here.
And I want to follow up on the question since we were talking about it. But what is talking about usage. Are there any mechanisms in place to follow up post-occupancy, to review usage, just to see how accurate it is, or do you have any accuracy studies to see how accurate the tool is, or plan to do any?
Yeah. No. So we are starting to get some preliminary data. And I'm glad, I don't know who asked the question, but I'm glad they did, because we're starting to get some preliminary data from the city of Santa Fe. And the thing that I have learned in talking to a well-respected statistician in the water industry is that you do have to wait a little while to really look backwards. And we're fortunate because this went into a code requirement in the city of Santa Fe 3 years ago. We're starting to finally get some of that data that we can look at and go, okay, how close or not close is this? Because think about this. If you go and build a home and it's a second home or it's a vacation home, well, that's not going to be a very good comparison data point because that house is not fully occupied. Another thing to take into consideration is in year 1, maybe you're establishing landscape. And in year 2, that outdoor water use may drop dramatically because you're no longer establishing the landscape. Another thing that can influence this is, what was the weather and climate like that year? Was it a wet year? Was it next year a dry year? And that can have some influences too. So having said all of that, we are starting to get some information. We're able to weed out some homes that it just clearly shows that this is not a fully occupied home. This is only occupied some of the time. And what we haven't been able to do is follow up with overlay the weather data yet, because again, we're getting this information kind of preliminarily. But what we are seeing is that WERS is slightly over projecting somewhere in the I want to say anywhere from 10% over projections to maybe as much as 50%. Now, you go, wow, that's kind of a bit of a range. And while you're right, in a modeling scenario, you are going to have a range. The other thing, again, like I said, we haven't been able to layer in the weather information on top of that to see how that might influence usage. And the other thing I will say, I know this is going to sound like I'm trying to defend WERS. I'm really trying to speak in a very objective way with all of you, is that if you're going to have a model when it comes to water that under or over projects, you are going to want it to slightly over project. And the reason being is because you can't just turn up the water plant and crank out more water in some places. You're limited by water rights. And you may have different constraints as far as sourcing of water. So when you're talking to a land use planner, if a property slightly over projects its usage, you go, oh, well, okay, there's a little bit of a safety factor. If you're under projecting and it's using more, and then you enter in the multiplier effect of a 200-300 home development, or even a 50 home development, you go, oh gosh, now we have under projected usage times 50 or times 200. Now we don't really have quite the water supply that we thought we did, and we run into an issue. And that issue, not to be over dramatic, but it can be as bad as we got to temporarily stop issuing permits. And that is not a good thing if you are employed in the building industry. So that's why I say the over projection is going to be a little bit of a better scenario than under projection.
Thank you so much for elaborating on that. So following up on the snowmelt question, I think this is actually two questions within one. I guess the question is, can using the tool to project rainwater catchment down to the scale of per item. So for example, if someone wanted to just flush their toilets with rainwater, which is technically pretty much somewhat legal, more so than everything else, drinking it, for example, can they do that? And then to follow up with that, does the tool account for the lower rainwater accumulation then in the winter months?
So yeah, I mean, I if I heard the question right, Brett, yes, the tool can project if I'm just using rainwater for toilets. That was the example I walked through. As far as the differing rain amounts in a year, or I'm sorry, in a month, in various months, yes, it does take that into account. And the other thing our tool does is it kind of does a reset, if I'm referring to that correctly, and Lorene will correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it does kind of reset at the end of every month. So it says, okay, at this month you've got, it kind of presumes that you've emptied out your storage and you're starting fresh again. And it looks at it kind of in a month-by-month picture rather than a daily picture. And it also doesn't look at it in a yearly picture either. We went with the month increment.
Right,
so,
if you want me to, can you hear me, Mike?
Oh, yeah, go ahead and add to that. Yeah, go ahead and add to that, Lorene.
So basically, if your tank, let's say, can only handle 1,000 gallons and you're collecting, and you have the ability to collect 1,200, you're only going to get credit actually for 9 because there's a 10% safety factor on the tank. But if you're collecting, say, 500 gallons and you're only using 3, there'll be a carryover month to month, but it'll never be more than 90% of the tank's capacity. And the assumption is, especially in areas where there is frost, that by the time you get to a point where you're not necessarily able to collect, that the tank will be at its lowest point, if that makes sense. So that's one of the conservative safety factors that we've integrated into this rainwater catchment. The other is that if you don't attribute that captured water to anything, you don't get credit for it. It's like putting solar panels on your house but not hooking it up to anything. Why should you get credit, offset for energy use when you're not using it for anything? So unless you actually tell the tool for what you intend it to be used, whether it's toilets or whatever it may be indoors, or outdoors, you're just not going to get the credit. And even then, you only get as much credit as you're collecting, not what your capacity for collection may be. So if you can collect 5,000 gallons a month, great. But if you can only hold 1,000, you're only going to get 900 of use available out of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, Serena.
Yeah, everybody, I told you she's smarter than me.
We are at 1 o'clock, but we still have more questions, and I want to keep going with those. Mike, if you can still stick around.
Oh yeah, I'm here.
But before we do that, I want to, I guess, have you just real quickly articulate the opportunity for next steps for folks here on this webinar, just in general next steps, as well as you know, a very time-specific one we've been talking about.
Right. So a couple things. If you're interested in, you know, doing something like be a field inspector for an existing verifier, reach out using the email address that you see there, and that email address is going to be used throughout my answer here. But if you are wanting to be a WERS verifier, then you know we'll have to get you signed up to take a course for that. Traditionally, we've done those in person. Obviously, that's a little bit of a difficult thing to do right now. So we're working on trying to offer an online verifier course. We do have a couple of hurdles we need to clear to do that. But then the other thing that Brett was kind of hinting at is that we would like to hold a WERS consultant course, which is easier for us to offer online. We'd like to offer that WERS consultant course probably possibly late May, but more likely early June. And if you are interested in that, you can contact Brett about that, or you can contact me at that email address that was on the screen earlier. And we can get you information on how to get registered for that. And we'll also have slides, some information that you would view ahead of the live training. And then there would also be a live training component that would probably be broken into 2 different sessions, or maybe 3, just to keep the length down, because we don't want to monopolize your entire day with online training. So look for that information coming out of GreenHome Institute in the coming weeks.
Great. Well, let's get to some more questions. And just a reminder, after we wrap up questions, we're going to have Paul on from the Ottawa County, Michigan Planning Department to talk about some of the challenges and opportunities occurring here with groundwater depletion, and you know how potentially things like these types of rating scores can work to alleviate them. So stick around for that if you'd like. If you don't worry. It's not part of the CEUs. You don't have to stay. It's just a great opportunity if you'd like to learn more. So the next question has to do with accessory dwelling units, and just really a confirmation that you know, a tool like this could be used specifically just for the ADU.
Okay. Well, so if help me out a little bit on this one, Brett. If I'm understanding ADUs right, that could also be characterized as a casita, right?
I've never heard that word in my life.
Okay, like a guest house.
I mean, people use the word ADU and they can mean typically 4 different things. But yeah, attached or detached house. So yeah.
Sure. Well, okay. So the answer is yes. In fact, we've already done verifications out in New Mexico for both the main property, I'm sorry, the main house on a property, and then the casita, which is in other vernacular would be a guest house, a mother-in-law suite, something like that. We've done verifications on those, so that's not an issue. What we, I guess the one thing that pops into my mind as far as those kind of situations go is that we have typically worked with the jurisdiction having authority to come to some sort of agreement on the property itself, how much of the property, and I'm really referring to the land portion, how much of it is attributed to the main structure, the main residence, and how much is attributed to the ancillary unit. Now, if it's obviously inside the main property, that's a little bit of a different situation. But if it's another structure, then we just have to figure out what % of the breakdown does that work on the outdoor.
Great, thanks. Just can you really, and I've personally recognized this on some projects we've looked at, but just really kind of hit at the sort of value and opportunity to utilize this for existing building evaluation, just trying to evaluate your improvement ability. And then also when you're answering that, can you let us know if you can utilize existing water usage data when you're doing that through that analyzation?
Sure. So I'll touch on the second question briefly, because while we haven't really dealt with existing property programs, meaning was this part of a retrofit program that also utilized WERS? So we don't have some of that comparison data to utilize. The tool does have the ability to look at existing properties, and it can do an assessment, or it can also look at the improvements. So again, playing the what if game, and I think this really kind of weaves itself into a incentive program to say, all right, if we've got, take your own house, whatever house you may be sitting in right now, and you go, okay, I'm going to analyze this property that I'm sitting in right now, but then I'm going to change out all the shower heads. You would be able to see, the tool will be able to show you the change in your projected water usage. You could then keep going. Okay, I'm gonna get a better clothes washer. I'm gonna get a better dishwasher. I'm gonna add a rain barrel. I'm going to, add a gray water system. Whatever it is, the tool has the ability for you to kind of do that, and I think it would work well. We see a lot of rebate and incentive programs are tied to individual items, toilet retrofits. We're going to remove turf grass. We're going to incentivize or give away aerators for faucets. We don't really see whole property incentives, and that's unfortunate. And there are some within our development group who really, really want to see this happen, because they feel that a tool like WERS would be able to empower water utilities or districts to say, hey, look, we're going to give you the freedom to do the adjustments or the improvements that you want to do. And maybe you do want to keep your turf grass. Okay, but there are other adjustments that you can make that can also save substantial amounts of water. A tool like WERS would be able to show you exactly what you're saving and some of the ramifications of your choices.
Great, thanks, Mike. And the last question before we wrap up, you had mentioned that you can use alternative pathways for the outdoor water use calculations. Do you have a list of those pathways on what's approved, what's not, how to get approved? I mean, just saying, I think anybody could just make up their own outdoor water calculator these days. And so, is there a line being drawn or any way that you're looking to do that?
Right. So, all right. So I'll answer the first. I'll kind of answer it in halves. I'll take the first half, and I'll look to Lorene to answer the second half. On the first half, we already have built into the tool Lead for Homes, WaterSense, and Quell, which, for those of you who maybe aren't familiar, is Qualified Water Efficient Landscape. Those are already in there. However, that is, we're not stuck at those three. We could add others. The second half, and why I kind of look in Lorene's direction, is just the question of how would we go about adding I'm assuming it would be a WERS development group decision based on information that was supplied to the group to say, hey, what about this? What about that? And then also, Lorraine, if you could just touch on like a couple of the data points that we look for from those third-party programs.
Sure, they would have to have a compelling similarity to the EPA WaterSense outdoor calculator, and LEED, of course, the LEED for Homes program also has a total water use outdoor calculation program, and the data points that are typical are, of course, the plant type, the water use factors or K factors, the microclimate, the irrigation type, the irrigation efficiency. So if we were to be presented with something that has exactly the same information that's collected, then we would have the development committee review it and approve it accordingly. But if you've already got the free version of either, the workbook of LEED or the EPA WaterSense tool, outdoor water tool, I don't know why you'd want to go and create something of your own. I'm just saying, because basically once you've done all the work on either of those two forms, you'd be entering what the baseline water use that's calculated, and then what the designed water use would be, and then the tool will take it from there.
Great. Thanks, Maureen. That is going to conclude this part of our session here. Like I said, as far as the CEUs go, so please stick around if you all want to talk and learn a little bit more about opportunities and challenges with county and regional planning for groundwater depletion. We're going to be continuing our conversation here on that after this. But just real quick, Mike, where can people go to get more information or get involved if they want to learn more?
So obviously WERS, the website right is there on your screen, www.wers.us, but I'll give a shout out to one of your attendees, Matthew Stanfield has already emailed me asking for information on WERS consultant training. And he used the email address that you have there on your screen. So if people just have questions in general, or if they're wanting to find out more about training, they can send me an email right there. As Matthew can attest, he's already done it, and I've seen it come in.
Great, Mike and Lorraine for joining us. Thank you so much. Thanks to the Green Builder Coalition. Huge Happy Earth Day, and a big public service announcement that I have to give you right now is we have to ask you to please stay safe, to please shelter in place. If you don't need to go out, do not go out. The faster we can do this, the quicker we can get out of this. So please do that, and we hope to see you all in person here someday soon. So great, that concludes this session. Paul, I am going to turn it over to you now.
Great, thank you very much, Brett and Mike. Getting my screen up now. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Good. And I'll add the personal touch of a video. Okay. Yeah. Well, again, appreciate the opportunity to talk about Ottawa County's groundwater challenges and why it'll add some context as to why we're looking at water use efficiency much more critically and necessarily here in this part of Michigan. So let's get these slides to transfer. There we go. All right, so Michigan, Great Lakes State, there we are, Ottawa County, on the shorelines of Lake Michigan. And I'm sure many of us have seen this drought map from the EPA, and you'll notice Michigan, we're talking about, or actually groundwater depletion, not drought, groundwater depletion here. Michigan, not identified, but we do have a deep bedrock aquifer system called the Marshall Sandstone Formation which is a primary bedrock aquifer for many communities across the state of Michigan. And in Ottawa County, it began, the first stories we heard about some groundwater depletion issues were about 10 years ago now. We had several subdivisions in the center part of the county. The homeowners woke up in the morning, they're brand new subdivisions, they're all well-dependent structures. Homeowners woke up and they ran out of water. No water coming out of their faucets. About that same time, we also had several farmers. We're a strong agricultural county here. We had several farmers that had irrigated their fields the night before. And the day later, 2 days later, they noticed, for example, soybean crops had all been burnt. And they learned that they had irrigated their crops with water that was highly rich in sodium chloride. For Ottawa County, being in Michigan, these types of issues of water access, quantity, and quality issues are incredibly important. We're the fastest growing county in the state of Michigan. We have been for several decades. That growth is expected to continue. We have strong economic development in the county or in the state, and one of the top producing agricultural counties in the state of Michigan, and also one of the most diverse agriculture nationwide with the microclimate that we have here along the shorelines of Lake Michigan specifically. What's really interesting when we're talking about groundwater concerns is being by Lake Michigan, we also have, we're dealing right now with high water levels that are eroding shorelines of Lake Michigan. Homes are literally falling in not too far from where I'm standing right now. There's a lot of excess surface water. And so when we're talking about depletion in groundwater, that's a big issue. And we found that out about 10 years ago. We did not immediately just bury our head in the sand to forget about it. We put our head in the ground right away to conduct some scientific studies to figure out what is happening. There's Ottawa County showing this bedrock geology in Michigan. It's the Marshall Sandstone Formation, that pink color there. That's the primary bedrock aquifer that runs through the county. We do a cross section. I'm going to do a little bit of geology here. For those that are still on the line, you'll get a sense of some of the geologic formations in Michigan. So this is a cross section that you can see going from Ottawa County on the west side of the state over to what we call the thumb area by Lake Huron. If you slice Michigan in half, you can see the bedrock formations. You'll see that Marshall Sandstone Formation stretches underneath the county in that bowl shape. That's the bedrock formation. Then on the top is the glacial aquifer system. Essentially, that's where we build our homes on that glacial drift material. Ottawa County is incredibly unique. If you look, zooming in here on the left side of the slide, you can see a shoreline there. That's Lake Michigan. The green dots indicate those homeowners that have private wells in the glacial drift aquifer system. And as we move into the interior of the county, where there's not public infrastructure, those private wells then go into the deep bedrock formation. If you look at Ottawa County as a whole from the perspective of the entire state in this map, glacial wells are recognized as blue here, and bedrock are red. Ottawa County is highly unique in that you can see in the center part of our county, the primary source of water access for homeowners and businesses and agriculture will be that deep bedrock formation. Looking from an aerial perspective on Ottawa County, we're also unique. We have a lot of unique factors and variables that are contributing to this challenge we're facing. One, you'll notice that, so the center part of the county, that's where we're having concerns. And that is a largely rural expanse of the county with our strong ag. Our growth has occurred around the perimeter of Ottawa County with the city of Holland and Grand Haven on Lake Michigan, the city of Zeeland. And where you have the dense populations, that's where you have public infrastructure. You don't have public water supply, and that public water supply comes from Lake Michigan. You don't have that, you're on a well system. And it's also incredibly expensive to extend public infrastructure. So historically, we've been dependent on private wells in those locations to give people water access. You look at the central part of the county in terms of growth over the last 20 years, it's had a 126% increase in population growth, and it's expected to continue. What we've learned through 7 years of scientific study on our groundwater is that those homeowners in the one community that I talked about in the beginning, they were a direct experienced directly the effect of groundwater withdrawals. We've seen up to 40-foot decline in static water level in that deep bedrock formation. It's very unique for us because of the geology again and the way that our land development happens in Ottawa County. You can see this graphic that we've created, Marshall sandstone with a water layer there. You got homes on private wells into the Marshall sandstone bedrock and those homes in the glacial drift. The center part of Ottawa County, our concern, even though we have all this surface water that people are accessing that have the glacial material to utilize, in the center part of Ottawa County, that glacier material is very thin. It's so thin that it's not conducive for private wells, for potable water. So when new developments go in, we are putting new straws into the ground going to that deep sandstone, which has been the primary source of water. Over time, as more growth has happened and more wells are going into that deep formation, again, because the glacial is not productive enough, that water level has dropped. It is dropping because we unfortunately, through the scientific study, have learned that we have this thick layer of clay that you can see in this graphic that sits right in between the glacial system and the Marshall sandstone. That prevents the natural recharge of the system. But what we're doing is we're pumping more water out of that Marshall sandstone formation than can be recharged back into the system. So as the rainfall goes, it hits, doesn't get through. And the problem's compounded with the quality issue, because as our water levels are dropping, chloride, sodium chloride migration is coming up from that sandstone. It's very briny water, it's salt water, because that Marshall sandstone was formed 300 million years ago when Michigan at one point was a shallow saltwater sea. All that water and that salt sat in that sandstone, the glaciers retreated, it filled the sandstone with that fresh water. As we're continuing to pump it, we're pumping that salt water from the deep system up to the well pumps. So again, it's a quality issue, sodium chloride, and it's a quantity issue because the water levels are dropping. You can see some of the trends here over time. Up to 2015, we had a 40-foot decline. Looking at population growth in the county going into the future, based on trends, we're expecting another up to 20-foot decline in that static water level. I recognize I'm going through these slides fairly quickly, but I want to respect your time. So that is essentially the geology concerns that we have and the water availability concerns that we have for Ottawa County being surprising. Again, we're a county that's on the shorelines of Lake Michigan having this challenge. So what are we doing? We need to plan for groundwater sustainability. It's incredibly important. It's one of our #1 issues facing us right now. We know we have to change the way we think about land use planning, the way we think about building and site development, and the way we think about water use. Our team and a bunch of experts, geologists, engineers, scientists, we spent over 20 months developing a proactive strategies index on all these various mitigation strategies that we need to pursue in Ottawa County to effectively manage our water uses into the future, to still allow that growth and economic growth to continue to happen and support our agricultural industry. Primary goal of the plan, reduce dependency on the bedrock system. We need to be creative. We're not doing that yet in Michigan because we're in all new territory here. We need to also protect and enhance recharge of the aquifer system and embrace water conservation and reuse. All those strategies in that document we're breaking down to education, integrating behavioral change, mitigation techniques. That's zoning and planning, best practices, new technologies, and then coordination on how we'll pull this together as various teams and task forces. I wanted to touch on, I've been having these conversations with Brett and Mike on water use, and how do we, we can work on it from a regulatory perspective and a land use perspective countywide, but how can our residents and businesses get involved and understand how they can contribute to enhancing our water efficiency? First, of course, is education. One of the big things that we recognize is turf grass. It's fairly unique, even if you look at other areas of the Midwest. We have a lot of green grass, takes a lot of water consumption for us. We need to think more about utilizing water conscious plantings and xeriscaping, and looking at planting native grasses and pollinator habitats. Recycling rainwater is important, and there's various aspects and challenges to get these types of strategies implemented at the local level, but we really have to start doing that. And even from a commercial perspective, looking at the way landscapes are designed from commercial properties, incorporating more native landscape materials that don't require as much water. Trying to create that education and advocacy is really important. We have to draw attention to the matter. We have to start developing behavioral changes among our residents and business owners. So we're thinking about creating some landscape contests to start to promote it and get people to implement these types of practices, and incentivizing those things to occur. And even if you're having irrigation systems installed, can you recycle that water? Are there storage retention ponds you can utilize to water lawns that is not taking water away? And I do want to also note that we're viewing this not just for those people on private wells. This is a countywide effort that everyone needs to be involved in, because ultimately we know that there will be more homes and that will be going onto a public water supply strategically because they have to. And those water transmission lines are only so big. So as more people will need to start getting on those public infrastructure systems, we all have to start thinking about water conservation. This is again, a countywide and a regional challenge that we're just at the very beginning stages of for Michigan. Other big thing, irrigation systems. Obviously, don't water your lawn when it's raining, and we're working with irrigation specialists on getting rain gauges to be a more common practice. Creating some training certifications for those industry professionals doing landscape design, installation and maintenance. Gray water systems are also big, gray water systems for commercial and residential. So then we get to general, water conservation strategies at a household. That kind of leads us into this WERS discussion. We also want to, again, to promote this and get people to think in a better way about water use than we ever have before. Creating competitions for water efficient buildings, residential or commercial. And how do we do that? How do we quantify it? This is something that we're in this exploratory phase right now. Is WERS an opportunity for new buildings in Michigan? So we're assessing what those opportunities are, and to see where that interest lies, to see if there's interest in individuals becoming, from a voluntary perspective, doing the WERS consulting. We need to see if this is an opportunity. And I appreciate the ability to share this with you and to talk with Brett and Mike as we go through these early stages. And for those on this, if you can see this slide, myottawa.org/groundwater, you can learn a lot more about our challenges. I can take more questions now, Mike, if that works for you.
Yeah. Why don't we see what other questions that are out there for you? We can take some specific questions. I guess just to kind of kick the ball. I know locally, regionally, every water issue is very unique and different. But with groundwater depletion issues across the country, do you have any idea of how similar or way different they are compared to the ones in Ottawa County?
Yeah, there are similarities in the fact that there is depletion. For us, we are being very proactive. As I mentioned, as soon as we learned about some of these challenges with some homeowners and farmers, we instantly embarked on some detailed studies. So being proactive on addressing the issue so it doesn't become overly amplified as a concern is important for us. But I know there's a lot we can learn from the Western states. But they have, as Mike talked about, building into codes in Santa Fe and other communities out west, the water use efficiency and building structures. We're not to that point right now of regulation to that degree, not yet. But we want to explore these things to make sure that we're aligning ourselves incredibly well from a sustainability perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. And somebody here made a point, that this session here could probably be a entirely standalone session. So maybe, Paul, we could have you back for a more formal 1 hour session if that sounds good to you.
Yeah, I'd be more than willing to do that. I know I covered a lot of science really fast.
Yeah, and for those of you in West Michigan, whenever we can all go outside and meet in person again safely, we're hoping to have a Building Green and Beer event where we highlight this topic and other water opportunities. So you can come see us there as well. Let's see, I thought I saw a hand raised, but maybe not. So yeah, well, Paul, thanks for taking a second here oh, somebody actually wants to be unmuted to ask a question, and we don't usually do that, but why not? Let's make it happen. Sorry. Sorry, everyone. We're trying to sort by last names here, but here we go. All right, Kim, go for it.
Hey, Paul. Kim Shanahan in Santa Fe. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. A Michigander who's been down in Santa Fe for 35 years. Got family in your county, both sides of the family.
Excellent.
Fascinating presentation, especially on the topography of the subsurface in Michigan. One of the questions I have is that it appears that Ottawa County is its own distinct bowl that is separate from the larger bowl that is in the middle of the state of Michigan. Is that true? In other words, is your bowl distinctly different than the Grand Rapids area, which would be on the edge of the much larger bowl?
Yes, that's where the geology is very unique in Michigan. Kent County, they don't access the Marshall sandstone the way we do. And even to the county just south of us, Allegan County, they have much different. Their glacial system is incredibly deep there, and they don't utilize the Marshall. So we have this, again, very unique geology. And one of the individuals that's on our technical advisory team is the director of the Michigan Geologic Survey, John Yelich, and he has stated publicly that Ottawa County unfortunately has some of the worst geology for groundwater in the state of Michigan.
So kind of a different question, but one I think is pertinent. Do you now know how many homes you get per acre foot of water? Is that a calculation that you are aware of and pay attention to?
That is not a calculation I am aware of.
And let me just tell you why that's important as it relates to Santa Fe and indeed the entire Southwest. that is the only and the most important calculation that we contemplate when we think about water, especially with new home construction. So for instance, 20 years ago in Santa Fe, we believed that we got basically 4 homes per acre foot of water, an acre foot being roughly 325,000 gallons. So basically every home was presumed to consume about 80,000 gallons a year, roughly speaking. Since we have done things like toilet retrofit programs and other things, we went down to 5 homes per acre foot, or up to 5 homes per acre foot. And since we've done the WERS protocol in the last 3 years, we believe that we are now getting 6 homes per acre foot of water. And that drives all planning and development decisions for everything that we do, everything. In other words, when a subdivision comes in for approval, it has to be able to project how many acre feet of water is going to be consumed annually forever by that subdivision. And we restrict that. In other words, we don't let people get more than they say they're going to get. And we use the WERS tool to verify that. So in other words, for instance, for water, if you're doing a subdivision in Santa Fe and it's over 10 acre feet of usage that's presumed, you actually have to go out and buy wet water rights and get those wet water rights transferred to the city of Santa Fe's system. And so that whole kind of configuration of water rights and transfer and holding people to their limits and being able to predict and project what it is they're going to use is instrumental in all of the planning that we do in the Southwest. And I would suggest that you're about to be on the verge of doing exactly that same kind of a calculation.
Yes.
And so all the other things that we do within a home that lower the WERS score, all of those things are really important. But from a planning perspective, as you grow, you need to be able to figure out how much water all the growth is going to need so that you can potentially set limits to it. And the thing is that the reason why that's important is because the people who are doing new homes and new developments have to be better than existing homes, because it's almost impossible to go to your existing users and say, you have to use less so we can get more people in here.
Yep.
And that's why the new home people have to roll over, if you will, and say, okay, if we want to build to this market demand and we know that the water is limited, we will pledge that we will use half as much water as the average home in Ottawa County. And how do they prove that? They prove it with the WERS. And that's kind of the point of this earlier webinar that Mike did, was how does it impact your business? When I'm involved with the National Association and we talk about issues relative to water at our national meetings, people from the East Coast ask me frequently, well, how much is a consumer going to save in terms of dollars if they do all this expensive stuff? And the answer is not much, because the price of water is so freaking cheap that you'll never be able to have a cost effectiveness measure for the homeowner to be able to justify these drastic things you have to do. But the bigger question is given to the builders and the developers, which is, what is the value of you being able to pull a building permit and selling a home? That is an entirely different calculation. And it's really not a calculation that the homeowner bears. It's really one that the development community bears. So I don't mean to go on, and that's certainly not a question, but I felt like I needed to chime in with you a little bit as you're kind of on the precipice of what we've been dealing with for 50 years out here in the West.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Kim. I really appreciate you sharing your insights. Those will be valuable, and maybe we can connect offline as well, because we're in the early stages with my team looking at a countywide ordinance that kind of thinks about some of those things that you talked about. At this point, we're calling it cap and trade with new development that doesn't connect to infrastructure. How can we allow them to put homes on wells, but then reduce withdrawals from somewhere else. But the ability to quantify water usage is a big part of that whole process. So thank you again. I'd love to talk to you further.
Absolutely. I got a lot of time on my hands these days, and like you, I need a haircut, but that's okay.
But yeah, the hairstyles are stylists not available. Bummer.
Kim, real quick too, once you feel really confident in that data you mentioned, would you want to come back on here and do a presentation on that?
I could. I mean, I could do that with Mike. Mike knows as much about the city of Santa Fe, even though he comes here once a year. But he, yeah, the two of us certainly could do that. There are others who also from the city of Santa Fe who potentially may be up and ready and willing to do that as well.
Yeah, great. Well, I'll note it down, and I think that's something we'd love to discuss later when you feel good with it. So I thank you for chiming in too. Appreciate it.
Definitely.
So there was another question that did slip in here, Paul, and you know, I'm not going to name any names, but let's say there are these large water bottling facilities in Michigan that take up groundwater. Do they have any impact here, or could they have any impact? Any discussion on that?
Yeah. With the company in question, they're north of us in Osceola County. They got their permit from Eagle, Michigan's former DEQ, because their well pump is only about 45 feet deep. They're operating off a glacial system that's nearly 600 feet deep, and there's plenty of water recharge with all the surface water, snow melt, rainfall that we have. That drift aquifer recharges very quickly, so they are not impacting our situation.
Gotcha. Thank you for.
Could I ask a quick question of Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul, have you considered, even though people are on wells, the possibility of putting meters or providing a, there are products out there that they can attach to the inline into the home that would be able to track what their actual withdrawal is, so that we could see, you know, maybe in real time what the actual water use is?
Good question. We have talked about that previously. The cost and the technological capabilities, the resources, all are a factor in it, but certainly on the table for discussion.
I know I'll sign up for that right away. I have no idea what my water use is, and it's kind of painful to wonder being on a well. So thanks, Lorene.
Yeah, well, and it may be possible now with the smart meter technology, if in conjunction, there might be some rebate with the manufacturer, that you could work out a deal in terms of, you know, countywide tax credit, that, hey, if they decide to put a meter on and they get some estimate, whether it's WERS or WRI or whatever it is on their home, try and looking at it as a package in order to incentivize getting that meter installed. And if they do have like a Wi-Fi or a 5G tower in the area that can collect that data, we might be able to really and truly get that information real time.
Yeah, we are pursuing an extensive groundwater monitoring network. We're in the process of looking at the equipment and the design for that, but Michigan water laws are a bit different too. So when we get into, it's big education effort for people now, a whole new territory. And when we talk about putting meters on private wells and regulating their water use, definitely gets really tricky with our current riparian rights.
Thanks, Lorene. Thanks, Paul. Well, I don't see any other questions here. So again, Paul, thank you for following up and joining us. And just real quick, if anybody, whether they be someone looking to build or do a project here in Ottawa County, or if they're a government agency who's facing this issue and want to learn more too, where can people go to, to find out more?
Yeah, to connect with us, if that screen is still showing, the resource page, myauto.org/groundwater. We've got all the technical reports up there, the mapping. We're starting to build our strategies page. But yeah, learn more there and reach out to us. As I mentioned, this is a county-wide regional issue. So partners are a huge part of how we're going to make all this happen. So I would love to talk to anyone who's interested.
Great. Thank you so much. We're going to close out here. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your week and stay safe out there. Bye.
Thanks all.